Hey there everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Northwest Craftsman. Today we're going to be learning how to make a wooden box. And until relatively recently, you could find wooden boxes in a lot of places, whether it was shipping or around the house or around the shop. And in fact, in a lot of shops that still have old equipment, you can find these wooden boxes that are still holding bits and tools and all manner of different things because they really are pretty robust. However, when plastic and cardboard was cheaper to make for a lot of other applications, wooden boxes kind of fell out of vogue. But I kind of like the feel of having wooden boxes around the shop holding tools, especially when I made the wooden box. And so today I'm going to be making my first wooden box and showing you guys how to make your own wooden box using two joints that we recently learned, which is the rabbet joint and the dado joint. So stick around to learn how to make your own wooden box and just fill your shop with them. All right, let's get started. So the first step in making your box is to get your raw cut edges put together. Now with a rabbet joint, this is going to be a little bit different than just getting your width and your depth and cutting them out to exactly that size, because there is an interface that you need to pay attention to. So as I'm setting this up, one of the things you'll notice is that it depends whether or not I put my ends on the inside or on the outside of the lengthwise pieces. In the way that I have it set up here, the depth is going to be the length of my sides plus 2 times the thickness of my pieces that I have built. You can also set it up in the alternate configuration like I have here, where the ends go inside of your length. You just need to choose which direction you want to do it. It really doesn't matter which direction you go. But when you're trying to get your overall dimensions correct, make sure that you account for the depth that your rabbet is going to be cutting. I cut to half the depth of my thickness, which means that my overall width or length is going to be modified by 1 times my thickness. Watch the video through to the end and this will become much more clear. It's not as complicated as it sounds. Once you have your orientation set, you want to get the length at which you need to cut set, and I'm going to do this just empirically by marking the thickness of my board on the piece that I'm going to be cutting. This avoids a lot of measurement error because you know exactly where it's going to need to be interfacing to. If you want to be really precise, not like that, you can use a knife to create a knife wall. This is going to be a much smaller line than a pencil gives you, which means that when you're trying to work up to it, you can just cut it more accurately the first time rather than needing to work up to the line until you get your thickness correct. Once you have how far along your board you're going to cut, you need to measure how deep you're going to cut it. Again, I like to go at about half the thickness, so go ahead and measure that, and then move over to your dado stack and set it to that depth. With those two set, you're ready to align your workpiece to the blade itself, which you may have to do in 1 or 2 passes depending on what thickness of dado stack you can use. It is fine to work up to it if you don't have a dado stack thick enough to take the entire cut at once. That's what I'm doing here. But as a note, you really want to make sure that when you're cutting on the end of your board like this, you have it supported with a miter gauge or a crosscut sled if you've got a crosscut sled for your dado stack. With everything ready to go ahead and give it a rip, or a dado more appropriately. What you're going to do is, if you need to take your 2 passes, just take it in 2 separate spots. I like to line it up with the end of my workpiece first so that I get everything out of the end grain so that it can't chip out as easily, and then work my way up to the line rather than the other way around, which would be coming up to your line first and then working out towards the end of your workpiece. As a note, I described all of the steps in one, but you want to make sure that you take your first pass on both of your workpieces first before you make that adjustment for the second, so that it allows you not to make as many dimensional changes as often. With everything cut, go ahead and do a dry fit on everything to make sure that it fits flush all the way around the edge and that it's 90 degrees in the center. Now, it won't be perfectly 90 degrees in the center, but we can fix that when we're gluing it up. It's also worth noting that these frame clamps are extremely handy when you're trying to put together boxes like this, because it allows you to put even pressure all the way around. After assembling this box, I think I added a second one to my list because it's really handy to have one for the top and for the bottom. You'll see that a little bit later. Once everything fits the way that you want, you're going to go ahead and disassemble everything and then install a 1/4 inch stack on your dado so that we can cut the groove for the bottom of the box. There's 2 things you need to set for this process. One is going to be the distance from your fence to the blade, and then the other one is going to be the depth of the blade itself. The depth of the blade determines how deep into your sidewalls the bottom of your box is going to sit. It is important to know how deep it's going in all the way around, because you're going to need to be cutting a piece of plywood to this depth plus your internal dimensions all the way around to make sure that it doesn't fit too tightly, nor does it fall out. The distance from your fence to the blade sets how far off the bottom of your box will sit. Basically, the shelf that sits on the bottom of your box, how far off the bottom do you want it to be? This is much less critical for it to be exactly accurate because it's really up to personal preference. I think I set mine at about a 1/2 inch from the bottom, but it really just depends. Also worth noting is making sure that you're cutting the correct side on each one of these. You want to make sure that the bottom inside portion of your box is being cut with this groove each time. I don't know about you, but that's exactly the type of mistake that I would make. Reassemble your box with the clamp and make sure that everything is fitting together tightly. You should see very smooth alignment between each one of your side walls and where that groove intersects. Then measure the inside dimensions of your box and then add on some fraction of 2 times the depth that you cut your groove to. This accounts for the groove on both sides and ensures that the bottom of your box is not going to either fall out or interfere with the sides. Assuming I cut everything correctly, things should now fit together nice and tight all the way around the edge, but the bottom of the box should have a little bit of wiggle where it's not fully interfering, but you also can't see any gaps when you try to move it around. Once you confirm that everything fits properly, you're going to go ahead and apply some glue to the pieces that you put your rabbet joint on. Note, do not put glue inside of the groove where the shelf is going to fit. That can remain loose because it should be fully contained within the groove all the way around. With your glue in place, go ahead and throw your clamps all the way around and make sure that everything is nice and tight. Again, these band clamps work really well for projects just like this because it puts even pressure all the way around and is super easy to apply. Let your glue sit all night while it's in the clamp so that it's nice and strong the next day, and then it should be ready to go. Even right now, I can tell this thing is going to be super useful around the shop. Well guys, that's how you make a box out of rabbet joints. There's a couple of other ways that you can make a box, but this is a really good, simple, fast way to make a box, especially if you've got a dado stack that can do those rabbet joints really quickly. It literally just slaps together. So I'm actually probably going to be making more of these for my cabinets because it just makes it a little bit easier to organize things, and it'll give me some more practice making them. But if you guys have any questions about how to make a box like this, go ahead and leave it in the comment section down below. And if you like the kind of content we're producing here at Northwest Craftsman, we'd absolutely love a thumbs up on the video and a subscription to our channel. I'm loving seeing our community grow, and I'm super excited to have you guys around asking questions, getting involved, and just overall learning with me. Again, this is all a process of learning. I'm not saying that I'm the expert in all things woodworking. In fact, I'm far from an expert. All of this is a learning process for me, and I'm trying to share with you what exactly is happening and how I'm kind of going about figuring this out. So thank you guys again for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time. Happy woodworking.